Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. The training with Team 7 was going well in Kakashi's opinion. By the end of the first day he had pretty much gathered most of what he needed. Temari was definitely a very highly skilled kunoichi for her age and could see why she was picked for this whole affair. She was weak in close-range combat though, but that was easy to work on and that was what the rest of the team was for. He had noticed that Sakura had been pushing herself harder than normal, which was good to see, and he was wondering if it was because of their new teammate. At any rate, it was getting late and noticed that they were starting to tire. "Alright everyone, that's enough for today," Kakashi said as they all stopped their training. "I'll see you all here tomorrow at 9 for missions and then training afterwards." As the team members started to file out, he noticed that Sasuke was walking towards him. He had a feeling what the genin wanted and he was starting to worry about it. Sasuke walked right up to Kakashi and looked up at the Jonin teacher. "You said that you know how to use the Rasengan, right?" the Uchiha Avenger asked. "Yes and no, I'm not teaching you it," Kakashi told him, and he could see the anger there in the boy's eyes. "Why not? You taught me the Chidori and I can use something like that Rasengan thing," Sasuke told him, although he also thought that an idiot like Naruto shouldn't have a stronger technique than him. He was the prodigy in the class while Naruto had been the dead last. He had no idea when or how Naruto kept getting so much stronger, but he needed to keep ahead of the annoying blonde. "Naruto is a special case," Kakashi told him. He couldn't just come out and say it was because of who Naruto's father was or because of what was sealed inside of the boy. Sasuke didn't like that word that Kakashi had used, unfortunately. "Special. There's nothing special about him. He's an annoying loudmouth and an idiot. Why the hell should he get a jutsu like that anyway? He doesn't need it. I have to become stronger to Itachi and I won't be held back." Kakashi could see that the young boy wasn't taking this well. "Sasuke, you're very strong as it is. I already taught you my only original jutsu. You're faster and stronger than you were before the Chunin exams as well. Although I didn't approve of you stealing Lee's movements, but we've already talked about that." During the training month, Kakashi had seen the boy use moves that only Guy or a student of his would know. When he asked him, the boy admitted to copying Lee's movements from earlier, and Kakashi had taken the boy aside and gave him a lecture on how it was improper to use the Sharingan against allies. That was one of the reasons many had a dislike for certain Uchiha members. When you trained, you're often someone just walks in and copies your hard work in a blink of an eye. Resentments easily followed. "Look, the only way you'll learn the Rasengan is if Naruto trains you in it, if you ask him and he agrees to do it," Kakashi told him. Sasuke scowled at the thought. There was no way the dead last of the class could teach him, the last of the Uchiha, anything. The idea of even asking him for help in any kind of training was laughable and an insult to him as well. Naruto wasn't something special and he sure as hell couldn't train him to do anything. "Then why can't you train me in another type of shaping then?" Sasuke asked him. Kakashi sighed. "Sasuke, I've already given you lots of training. I've even ignored some of the progress of the others just for you and I can't keep doing it." What he didn't mention was that he also did it to keep Sasuke from being by Gaara and also to keep him away from Orochimaru. He eyed that mark that was just inside of his shirt collar. It didn't look like the seal he had put on the boy was weakening, but he was starting to worry about the boy. Ever since he woke up from Itachi using that technique on him again, he had been colder and more distant. All that progress they had made seemed to be falling apart, and Kakashi was running out of ways to keep the team together. Not that Kakashi could entirely blame the boy. After 3 days of being put on a cross and being cut over and over again by Itachi, Kakashi didn't want to go through something like that again anytime soon. Although Kakashi had an idea of what Sasuke had seen in those 3 days of his own. Maybe he should see if he could get Sasuke some help. The boy never talked about his problems as he just kept them bottled up inside, and the Jonin could see it was eating the boy up inside. But then again, who was Kakashi to judge either? For years he left the deaths of Obito and Rin and everyone else he cared for weigh on his shoulders. He went to the memorial stone all the time just staring at all the names he knew from over the years. Although Obito was always the name he looked at first and for the longest. Maybe I should take my own advice sometime, Kakashi thought to himself as he internally sighed. Sasuke, you're already very strong as it is, one of the strongest genin around, and in time you will only get stronger, but you need to learn patience. You can't just become stronger overnight, it takes lots of heart, and you can't expect to just be handed everything all the time. With that, Sasuke turned around and walked off, angered that Kakashi wouldn't teach him. He couldn't understand it. He was the top of the class and better than any ninja in his age group, even older ninja. Besides, he needed to be stronger. After all the training he had done, when he had gone up against his brother, he had been swatted away like a fly. Then there were those eyes of his brother, those uncaring eyes. You don't hate enough. His older brother's words ran in his ears before he went through 3 days of hell watching his family and clan being over and over again. His fists clenched so hard that his nails were biting hard enough into his palms to draw out a little blood. They don't understand. None of them understood, Sasuke thought as he walked back to the empty Uchiha district. He looked around at all the empty buildings. He remembered when they were filled with his clan, but they were falling into disrepair. Even the old police station was now used by Anbu now. He remembered when these streets were alive with people, adults and children playing. Sometimes he could still remember the sounds of life on this road, but not anymore. They were as silent as a tomb for years now. None of them can understand the loss I've suffered, Sasuke darkly thought as he walked through the streets. I only have my vengeance in life. I've spent all this time to get stronger and I'm still too weak. I need to be stronger or I'll never him. My clan will never be avenged and I'll never find any kind of peace. He still had nightmares of that night, especially lately. He stopped looking around as his hatred grew and grew. He remembered the kindness of his mother, and his father had finally taken notice of him. He had mastered that fire jutsu after all that hard work. His father was finally going to train him, but then his older brother them all. He still couldn't stand to be in the room where his parents had been. He knew that the blood had been cleaned up, but he knew what had happened in that room. I swear no matter what I will get stronger, Sasuke vowed to himself and to the dead ghosts that haunted these buildings. I will get stronger in Itachi, no matter what I will. I don't care if his village is holding me back, I will find a way to get stronger. He grunted out, feeling the seal on his neck flared up. He felt the cold sweat on his brow as he fought it back, although for a moment he remembered a bit of what it felt like to use it. He had felt powerful, more powerful than he had ever felt, but he had been warned about using it. He remembered how hard his match in the Chunin exams had been because of it, but maybe there was a way of mastering it. There had to be a way to use the seal and stay in control. He started to slowly grin at the thought of that. Little did he know that he was being watched by a pair of eyes in the shadows. How much longer are we going to wait? A voice said. Yeah. This if annoying, a female said. Shut it. We were to check on his progress, and until we get the word from Lord Orochimaru we won't approach him until the time is right, said a deeper voice. Fine, but I just hope it's not too long, the final figure said, being very bored. Naruto and Temari. The two genins were walking their way to where her brothers were located. Mainly Naruto was just walking with her to make sure she knew the way, and also because he wanted to talk to Gaara again. He wasn't sure why, but he could tell that the boy had gone through a change, and that was good. Gaara was a lot like him in so many ways. And it would be nice to make a friend that knew what it was like to have a demon locked up inside of you and how people treated someone like that. So what did you think of the team? Naruto asked, trying to make conversation. It's different, Temari told him. The pink-haired girl needs to train a hell of a lot more, that's for sure, and the Uchiha needs to get that stick out of his too. At that, Naruto started laughing. Finally someone that feels the same way. I mean, all the girls are all over him. It's always Sasuke-kun this or Sasuke-kun that. Man, I don't get what's so cool about him. Well, he is pretty good looking and he's got that dark mysterious things going for him, she remarked, remembering her first time seeing him. She noticed the scowl on the other blonde and she had to admit, it was kind of cute if a bit childish. But he's got no real personality. That's for sure, Naruto muttered. I've been trying to get him to lighten up for a long time, but mostly he just ignores it. I mean, I once put exploding paint bombs in the teacher's lounge and everyone but Sasuke had laughed when the teachers were in all kinds of different colors for the rest of the day. You did what? Temari looked at him surprised. She couldn't believe he had done something like that. If she had tried something like that, her father would have been so angry with her. She didn't want to think about what he would have done. Oh, I've done a lot more than that, he chuckled. I used to do lots of pranks all the time. Why? Naruto thought about it. Well, sometimes it was to get back at people who weren't nice to me, sometimes it was to get people to notice me, other times it was just fun. I mean, haven't you ever pulled something over someone? I'm Akage's daughter. I can't be seen doing childish things, she told him, remembering her own childhood. Her father was a very strict upbringing. She hadn't allowed to do a lot of what younger girls were allowed to do because she had to keep up a proper appearance. Man, that's too bad. You missed out on a lot of fun, I bet, Naruto told her with his arms behind his head. So what? She snapped. We're not children anymore, so it's pointless. Oh, come on, you're never too old to have fun, he said, but she wasn't talking at that moment. He grunted and started thinking about her. She was way too serious at times. A slow smile started to form on his face. If she was too serious, then there was only one thing to do with that. He had to show her a good time and make her have fun. If he could do that, then maybe she would be a little less stiff with everyone. Hey Temari, a voice called out as Naruto looked up to see her brothers and their sensei. Kankuro, Gaara, Baki-sensei, Temari said, nodding to them. So how did training go? Baki asked his former student. It went all right, I suppose, she said with a shrug. Baki nodded and cast a glance over at Naruto, who was making his way over to Gaara. So things are going well with him. He's not what you'd expect. Are you sure of the reasons you were giving as to why the council chose him? Temari asked her old teacher. She had been made aware before she came as to why the Suna council chose Naruto as her future husband. Although she did agree that he was very strong, but given what she had learned from just a few days of being around him so much, she wasn't sure just how close her counsel was to the actual truth. Are you saying that they were wrong about him? Baki asked, concerned. I'm not sure I know how strong he is. In fact, he's actually gotten stronger with learning a move of their fourth Hokage in only a month, but as for him being some kind of secret weapon, I'm not seeing it. Baki nodded and put that information away for the moment. Even if the council made a small error, the boy was very strong in his own right. Hey Gaara, how have you been? Naruto smiled at the red-headed boy. Gaara looked a little unsure. He never had anyone actually be nice to him, and not all that long ago they were trying to one another, or at least he had been trying to the blonde. But it was also Naruto that had opened his eyes, and truth be told, he felt better about himself a lot lately too. I've been well, Gaara said to him in that same neutral tone, although there was a hint of something different. There was no menace in his voice anymore, and Naruto smiled at the sound of that. Naruto wasn't getting that creepy vibe off him anymore, and the boy could just tell that Gaara really had changed. He could see it in Gaara's eyes the most. They were still hard eyes but no longer had that hint of madness to them. Naruto gave that usual foxy grin at him. That's good to hear. I think I'll like having you for a brother. Gaara didn't know what to say to that. He was still getting used to feeling things, and although it was strange the feeling he was getting felt nice. Gaara nodded his head as he too felt that having him as a brother, or at least a brother-in-law, would be nice. The boy was just like him, and Gaara felt less alone in the world now. Kankuro blinked, looking as his younger brother and Naruto started talking. Well, Naruto did most of the talking as he told Gaara all about the day so far. He looked back to Temari and Baki, who looked on as Naruto was totally at ease with Gaara, and Gaara actually seemed a bit more relaxed as well. What the hell? Kankuro asked silently to them both. How the hell does he just talk to him like that after everything, and Gaara actually seems to like the guy? Temari just watched, but a small smile formed on her lips seeing Naruto act out the day's events in exaggerated motions as Gaara watched on. Unless you know Gaara very well, you couldn't pick up on his subtle moods, and Temari could see that her youngest brother was actually enjoying himself. It was just the way Gaara carried himself. It was less stiff and relaxed. She remembered how much that Naruto had gone through to make her comfortable, and it dawned on her that despite his more annoying traits, deep down he was actually a nice guy. This was the first time she had seen someone actually try and reach out to her little brother like that. So are we going to eat? Of what? Kankuro asked, bored after a while. Oh hey, I know the best place to eat. Naruto smiled largely and looked to Gaara. Hey, you like ramen? Temari rolled her eyes. She had figured out just how much of a ramen freak he was, and although she liked it herself, Naruto wanted to eat it all the time. But seeing Naruto and Gaara together, maybe it would be good for Gaara to spend a bit more time with him. Well, I guess so, Temari said as the others didn't have anything against it. Naruto was all smiles as he led them to his most favorite spot to eat in the whole world. The Ichiraku Ramen Bar, ran by Tyuki and his daughter Ayame. Naruto hadn't eaten there in a while given how busy he was lately, so he was eager to hurry up and eat his fill. Plus, with the new pay he was getting from Tsunade, his frog-looking wallet, Gama-chan, was a nice large shape. He led them through the streets as they came to the stand with the drapes over it as Naruto ducked his head under the cloth. Hey old man, I need at least 5 bowls of miso ramen. Naruto called out as he sat on his favorite stool. Naruto-kun, we haven't seen you in a while. Ayame smiled at him as her father got the order ready. Then she noticed the others coming in. Oh, hello. Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, what will you take? They gave their orders as the father and daughter team went to work on things. Well, it smells good so far, Baki said out loud. Yeah, they serve the best ramen in the world here. Naruto grinned as he couldn't wait for his first bowl. Tyuki laughed as he got the noodles ready. Thanks for the free advertising, Naruto, and that's one of the reasons you're our #1 customer. So are you friends of Naruto-kun? Ayame asked them. Actually Temari here is, Naruto wasn't sure how to go about it. He had told them of what was going on with him a while back, but he hadn't mentioned names to them. I'm Temari, the blonde female said. I'm Naruto's fiancé. That caused both cooks to pause for a second. They hadn't known who was going to marry Naruto, although the old ramen cook had to admit the girl was pretty if a little serious. Ayame, however, went right into Temari's face, nearly making the newly made Leaf Genin pull back a bit in her seat. Oh, so you're the one that he's told us about. Ayame looked the girl over, and it was making Temari a little uncomfortable. Please take care of Naruto-kun. He's a really nice guy and he could use someone in his life, plus maybe you can help keep him out of trouble. Nei-chan, Naruto said, embarrassed. Kankuro chuckled at the look on the boy's face. Shut it, makeup boy. What did you call me? Konkuro shouted out. This is war paint for your information. I think it's really makeup. After all, you dress up like a cat and play with dolls. Naruto said, crossing his arms. They're not dolls. The puppet user said in the defense of his beloved puppets. Temari couldn't stop a snickering escaping from her mouth. This wasn't the first time someone said this to her brother, although not this blatantly before. She also noticed that Gaara had a slight twitch on the side of his mouth for a second. She was surprised that Gaara had nearly smiled at that. Oh, I think playing with dolls is cute, Ayame smiled. And it shows you're really comfortable in your own masculinity to wear makeup. Konkuro just sat there with his mouth open. He then slumped down into his seat sulking. Being insulted by the blonde loudmouth was bad enough, but now the pretty girl behind the counter was getting in on it too. Hell, even his sister often said that was why he couldn't get a date. They started to eat up. Once the orders were ready, they were surprised by just how much Naruto could eat. As they started to eat up, Temari got to know the two ramen stand workers. They seemed fairly nice and they seemed to really like Naruto as well, and the ramen wasn't bad either. By the time they left, Temari had to admit that the place, while not fancy, was still kind of nice. And with how much Naruto spent, it was little wonder why he was their #1 customer. Ah, now that's what I call a good meal, Naruto said, patting his stomach. So far he had to admit that things were going well. He was getting along with Temari and her brothers and former teacher. Although he kept trying to sneak a look under that half of Baki's face that was covered, honestly, why did some ninja have to hide their faces? He got enough of that with Kakashi. Although Naruto was having such a good time that he wasn't watching where he was going, and when they turned the corner he nearly slammed into someone. Hey! Careful, Naruto! Naruto snapped out of his thoughts as he nearly ran into Tenten. Oh man, sorry about that, Tenten, he said, and then noticed that she was with Neji and Lee on his crutches. Hey Neji. Hey there, fuzzy brows. Naruto-kun, it is very youthful to see you again. Lee smiled at him, but then noticed that his two friends weren't as happy. In fact, they were looking at Naruto's companions, especially to Gaara. Lee locked eyes with the red-headed genin that had put him into this condition, and said boy stared back. Naruto looked at both groups and swallowed nervously. There was a lot of bad blood between the two groups. First there was how badly Tenten lost to Temari, then there had been what Gaara had done to Lee. He was hoping that a fight wouldn't break out, as things had been going to great today. But given his luck, he should have known that something would ruin things. To say there was tension was like saying that Jiraiya was a pervert. Tenten took a hard look at Temari, but she had promised not to start anything with her. But Gaara, on the other hand, she had seen how bad Lee had taken to his injuries at first, and what the boy had done in the Chunin exams had been out of line in her opinion. Neji had his usual cold look on, although if you were to look more closely you could see that his eyes were a little colder than his face. He too was thinking the same things as Tenten about Gaara. Although he knew that the other boy was very strong, if he tried to hurt his teammate again he would take him down as fast and as hard as he could. There was a heavy silence, and then Gaara of all people walked towards Lee. Everyone tensed up as the boy got close to the green-clad genin. Gaara looked at the injuries that he had caused when he had been less than stable. Lee had given him one of the best battles in his young life, had pushed Gaara to his limits, but in the end Gaara had not only beat Lee, he had taken away his ability as a ninja by the looks of it. He had tried to the boy until that older green-clad ninja jumped in the way and had stopped his sand. He remembered how the man had said that Lee was important to him, and at that time he couldn't understand that. But now he did understand what the man had meant that day, and he also understood the full impact of what he had done. This was one of Naruto's friends and he had hurt Lee very badly. It left a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. He hadn't felt that emotion since he was a little child when his sand would go out and hurt a child by accident. Gaara remembered getting medicine and offering it to the boy, but that had not worked out as he had hoped. Now looking at Lee, he felt that same emotions all over again. He looked into Lee's eyes and said something that no one expected him to say. "I'm sorry," Gaara told him. Everyone blinked in surprise, although Lee grew a small smile on his face. "You don't have to do that," Lee smiled at him. "What? Lee, well, he crippled you." Tenten shouted at him. "I know, but we are ninja. In our line of work we enter battle knowing that something like this could happen or that we can die," Lee said with his full resolve in his voice. "I could have quit that match at any moment, but I wanted to push myself to my limits, maybe even beyond my limits. We all knew that the Chunin exams were dangerous when we entered as a team, and I was fully prepared to die for my Nindo." Lee looked to Gaara again. "You are one of the strongest people I know, and it was an honor to fight you, and I hope to do it again." "What?" Gaara asked, surprised, as was everyone else there. Lee gave Gaara a thumbs up with a smile. "Lady Tsunade has said that she is looking into my condition. I am sure that with her help I'll heal, and when I do I hope we can have a friendly rematch one day." Lee had been meaning to surprise his friends with the news later that day, hence why they were on their way to meet Guy. Lee wanted to tell his team all together, but it would seem that he would have to tell Guy second. Although he was worried, as Tsunade said that the treatment was looking dangerous, but if he couldn't be a ninja then there wasn't anything else that Lee would want in life. He still had a dream to pursue, and if he died in the pursuit of that dream, then so be it. Naruto was all smiles at that. "All right. I knew that Ba-chan wouldn't let us down. Just you wait, Lee, she'll make you better than ever." Tenten smiled, and even Neji had a small smile on his face at that. It would be good to have Lee back. For the past week things had been going okay with her life. Temari was getting used to the village, although it was still not her home. After her brothers and Baki had left, she had felt very alone even with sharing a home. But at least Naruto turned out to be decent company. She had been also started with the wind training with Naruto, although he was starting to have some trouble with it. She did her best to explain it, but it seemed that Naruto worked best with simple instructions and then he could get along fine enough. In Suna, when someone had wind elemental abilities, you had to cut a rock with it. It wasn't easy as a rock was very tough, but once you did that anything else was child's play. Basically you had to hold a rock in your hand and focus on the wind chakra and force it to cut the rock up. Temari had managed to do it after nearly 6 months of training. She constantly made small cuts into her first rock over and over until it broke. Then she had to try and do it with less cuts each time until she could cut a rock with only one try. She had found out that typically in this village you would use a leaf, but it wasn't like there was much plant life in her home. You had to use what you could, and with Naruto's huge chakra she felt that a rock would be better to get him to do it properly. He was more of a blunt fighter anyway, and with wind jutsus at his disposal he could be very devastating in battle. After all, wind wasn't called the battle element for nothing. Besides that, it was just slightly odd living in the Leaf Village. She got some cold looks, but she was prepared for it. Although she would admit that it was kind of lonely, but she was used to that as well. After all, most of her life her father had been cold and distant, her younger brother obsessed over his puppets, her youngest brother had until recently been completely insane. Baki had been more teacher than friend, and because of her Gaara and her status she didn't have many friends. But at least she was in her own village. Here she didn't have the same sense of belonging that she had on her village. So she was currently lying on a small ledge looking outside the window of her room, looking outside. She could smell the scent of the trees and flowers. She was surprised that Naruto actually gardened at least a little and had a hard time telling what was a weed and what was a plant, but she still missed the smell of desert lilies as well. While she was at the window, Naruto was up in his room getting all the supplies he needed for the day. His team had the day off and Tsunade suggested to him that on days off he might as well get to know Temari more. Well, given what he heard of her childhood being just as lonely as his, only less fun it seemed. Well, he was going to fix that up. He put his supplies into a sealing scroll and he wished he had known this before. Knowing how to seal things up would have made his life so much easier, and he was wondering why that was never taught in school. Maybe he'd ask Haruka next time he saw him. At any rate, this would be a nice way of thanking Temari for showing him how to do it. He went in search of Temari as he had something planned out for the entire day. He found her in her room looking out the window. He paused for a moment as he just watched her. He guessed she was thinking about her home he would be if he was in her position. "Hey, Temari," he asked. Temari looked over to him. "What's up? You okay?" Naruto asked, seeing the look of longing in her eyes. "I'm fine," she said, getting up and away from the window. Naruto was silent a moment as he looked at her. She was putting up a false face, which was something he had a lot of experience in. He knew the signs of someone that was hiding any kind of pain, as he used that same mask himself a lot of the time. "I know you miss your home and I'm sorry you had to leave it," Naruto told her bluntly. Temari hadn't thought she looked that transparent, but she just shrugged it off. "Not your fault, sometimes you just have to take what life gives you. Nothing can change it, so I'm not going to let it dominate my life." "You know you never said, but what are the things you miss the most?" Naruto was genuinely curious. "I mean, I know what I would miss if I had to leave, but I've never been to Suna." Temari shrugged. "Well, there is a few things. There was this nice coffee shop that served this great stuff there. I miss the sunsets that I could see on the mountain ranges. In the right season, the sands can look like they're on fire for a moment. The way the west wind would bring the scent of desert lilies was also nice." Temari lost herself in her memories of her home. Sure, it was a bit desolate compared to other villages, but it was still her home. Naruto could see the downcast look on her face and he figured that she really did need what he had planned out, plus he filed away those little pieces of information away for later as well. He went over and grabbed her hand, surprising the taller blonde. "What the hell?" Temari asked, being dragged through the home. "Come on, you're coming with me," Naruto simply said as she nearly dragged her out of the room. She barely managed to grab her fan before leaving as well. It wasn't that she was expecting trouble, it was just that she always went everywhere with it. It was when he finally stopped on the top of a building that she finally managed to get him to stop and explain. She wanted to know why they had the day off. He came and dragged her halfway across the village to some building looking around for someone. Naruto grinned at her. "Well, you said that you never got to have any fun in your life." "I said I never had a normal childhood, and for the record I did have fun at times," she said, putting her hands on her hips. "Yeah, but I doubt it was much, so I'm going to show you just how much fun you missed out on. One of the things I'm going to show you is how to pull pranks on people as well." Naruto told her, taking out a scroll. "This is stupid," Temari said, turning around to leave. "What, you scared, or just think that you can't pull one off?" Naruto challenged her. He saw her pause in mid-step and he knew that she was a very proud girl, and like a lot of proud people couldn't pass up a challenge to their pride. Now he just needed to push her once more. "Plus, I guess the fact that the first target is Shikamaru means nothing, huh?" Temari turned around to see Naruto pointing in the distance. She took a long look and managed to spot the boy laying on some bench on the top of a building, looking like he was sleeping of all things. An eyebrow started to tick on her head at that. She never did forgive him for that humiliation in the Chunin exams. Their battle had been long, but in the end he had outmaneuvered her the entire time. He had her in that shadow technique of his, and what did he do? He gave up. Sure, she technically won, but she didn't feel like it was a win. the fact that he didn't like to fight girls, and how work was too troublesome, was also very irritation to her. The boy was just so lazy and a bit in her opinion, plus the fact that he was the only one promoted to chunin and he still shirked off the responsibility. If she had been made a chunin, she would have honored the position and not sat around sleeping the day away. What do you have planned? She asked Naruto, who just grinned a bit evilly. He pulled out a sealing scroll and suddenly in a cloud of smoke lots of hot air balloons tied down and other balloons that looked like they were filled with water. There were more of the hot air ones than the water ones and she was wondering what he was thinking of. Can you make sure that these balloons float over him with your fan? Naruto asked, and then Temari suddenly got where this was going. She had a grin on her face as she quickly helped him to tie the hot air balloons to the water balloons. Over with Shikamaru, he was enjoying a restful day. Sure, he was supposed to show up for a missionnement at the Hokage's office, but she never did say when he had to show up. So he was taking his time enjoying the clouds as he liked to. He loved clouds. They were just so carefree and slowly did whatever they felt like doing, which was just floating along really. He closed his eyes listening to the wind gently blowing, then the wind picked up a bit. He didn't think much of it until a shadow fell across his face. He just thought a cloud got in front of the sun. Now, yelled out a familiar voice. He opened his eyes just in time to see several shuriken hit several balloons, popping them, but then he noticed that several balloons were now falling, which made no sense unless they were filled with splash. Shikamaru got up after the water balloons hit him and looked over, seeing Naruto laughing his off with Temari, who looked like she was enjoying herself. What the hell, Naruto? Shikamaru yelled over to him. Sorry. Nothing personal, just trying to show Temari the joys of pranking people. Well, got to go, we got a lot more targets to hit, Naruto called out as he and Temari ran off. Shikamaru sighed as he wiped the water off his face. He hated it when he got pulled into one of Naruto's pranks. Sure, they were fun when they happened to other people, but not to him, although he will admit that was a unique one. But still, why did he have to ruin his cloud watching? He managed to get out of some work for Tsunade for the day, and then that happened, and worse, he seemed to have recruited Temari of all people to help. Those two blondes together seemed to be just so troublesome. Shikamaru, where the hell are you? Ino's voice yelled out from nearby. Lady Tsunade asked me to come looking for you for work. Damn it, the young chunin sighed. Figures that she would send Ino after me. Shikamaru, get out here now. I'm using my break time from the flower shop, so you better get your lazy out here now, or when I find you I'll use my mind transfer jutsu and make you walk to the Hokage's office myself. The thing was, he knew that she wasn't bluffing. He sighed as he got up off his spot, as now his whole day was ruined. First Tsunade, then Naruto and Temari, and now Ino, he muttered as he went to find Ino. Why is it that besides my mom, the most troublesome people I know are blondes? There you are. Where the hell were you? And why are you all wet? Ino asked him when he saw her. He just muttered something about troublesome blondes and went to the Hokage's tower. Elsewhere, Hinata was walking the streets of her village. She wasn't really caring much where she was going. Her team had finished off with a mission and she had said her farewells. She just wanted to be alone for the moment. Ever since Naruto's announcement of his marriage, she had been very depressed. She still broke down crying at times late at night in her room a few days. It just wasn't fair. She should have said something to him all those years ago, but she wasted all that time because she had been so shy. She was still shy and she hated being like that. What if she had found the courage to admit her feelings? If she and Naruto had been a couple, then would have the Hokage refused it? Then there was the fact that her family would most likely not approve of Naruto, at least not before the Chunin exams when he defeated Neji. She had seen how the village had changed a bit. Some people actually looked at Naruto without the cold looks, although she still saw many that held whatever resentment they had. She never did figure out why so many people seemed to dislike Naruto so much. One of the reasons that she came up with was that maybe his family had fallen into some dishonor in the face of the village. It would explain much, but she never heard of any Uzumaki family unless Naruto was the last. She found herself at the park. For some reason she stood there watching everyone having a fun time. She saw families there, children at play, and she felt a wave of sorrow over her. Her family wasn't really that warm. They had to be the picture of perfection and nobility. Her own father trained her and her sister very hard because Hinata knew that the main branch had to be the strongest, and she knew that she was a disappointment to the standards of her family. Although her father was cold, he wasn't totally abusive to her. It wasn't like he hurt her physically, but she did feel the pain of his disappointment in her. He always would say that she needed to be stronger, and she knew that he didn't know that she had overheard what he had said to Kurenai on that day. She wanted to make her father proud of her to be stronger, but she knew that she still had a ways to go. Looking at the children at play reminded her of her own lonely childhood. She never had any friends really while growing up. Maybe that was one of the reasons she noticed Naruto at an early age. He was lonely just like she had been. He wanted to be noticed as well, so he acted out and he trained himself so hard all the time. Hinata remembered the times she would secretly watch as he kept pushing himself long after others went home for the day. Hey, Hinata. She jumped as she was broken out of her thoughts as she turned around to see Kiba there with Akamaru. Kiba-kun, we've all been a bit worried about you lately, Kiba told her, so I decided to see if you needed someone to talk to. Thanks, Hinata said, giving a small smile as she looked back to the playground. Many of the children were leaving with family, it seemed, for the moment. Kiba stood beside her as she was looking over the playground, wondering what she was looking at. He knew that she was really depressed over the whole marriage thing with Naruto. He never knew just how much she must have liked him until this whole thing turned up. He hated seeing her like this actually. She was just the most kindest person that he ever met. She didn't deserve to be miserable like this. So, what are you thinking about? He asked. Just thinking about when I was younger. Kiba thought about it for a moment. You know, I can't remember seeing you all that much outside of the academy. Hinata jumped a bit as she looked down at her feet. He noticed the look and was worried. I just figured you had your own friends to play with, Kiba told her. Hinata's mood got a bit darker. I didn't really make friends until I was put on Team 10. Kiba was surprised by that. He figured that she would have had some friends, or at least some in her own clan. But the look on her face told him otherwise. He couldn't remember seeing her playing with others when he was younger, not that he looked for her. She was so quiet and she just blended into the background so much that you could easily overlook her. Now that they were put onto the same team, he had taken notice of her. She had become his friend like Shino had, and now he wished that he had been her friend when they were younger. Well, if he couldn't change the past, he would at least give her something better for the present. Come on with me, Kiba said as he grabbed her hand and led her into the playground. Kiba-kun, she asked. Let's just say I want to make up for you missing out on a few things. Kiba said as they got to a set of swings. He asked her to sit down and she nervously did, although she did with a small smile. She knew that she might be a bit old for this, but she never really got the chance to do something like this. In fact, she had been too scared as a little girl to try it out. Kiba helped her when he figured out that she never been on a swing before, so he got behind her and started pushing. Hinata had to admit it was fun. She had never had a friend to push her on one of these things, and the feeling she got when she got up made her feel funny in her stomach area, but in a good way. She saw Akamaru running below her, barking as he would try and jump up to tap her feet as she tried to move her feet like targets for the pup. She actually laughed a bit, and Kiba had heard her giggle but never really laugh before. It was a nice sound actually, and for some reason made him smile. "Mommy, aren't they a bit big for swings?" a little boy asked his mother as they passed by them. The mother just smiled at her son. "Don't point, Kenji, just leave the young couple on their date." At the word date, both young teens froze up, and it didn't help that they froze with his hands resting on her hips. Both of them noticed this and blushed as Hinata jumped off the swings and Kiba put his hands behind him quickly. Both avoided looking at the other for a moment. Kiba just meant to cheer her up, not make it look like he was dating her. "So, you know," Kiba wasn't sure what to say at the moment, and Akamaru gave a small whine and turned away. The little guy wasn't going to help him out with this one, it would seem. Thank you, Kiba-kun," Hinata said quickly to avoid anything more embarrassing happened between them. She knew that he was just trying to cheer her up after all. Kiba blinked and then smiled at her. "Sure, no problem. Just remember, if you're ever sad or lonely, me and Akamaru would be glad to help out." Akamaru barked to let her know that he agreed with his master. Hinata smiled, feeling a bit better now as she nodded her head. Elsewhere. So far, the blonde duo of Temari and Naruto had hit several targets throughout the day. Naruto felt good doing some pranks again. He hadn't the time since he made Genin after all, and he was well overdue. After they hit Shikamaru, they went on to the rest of the town as well. Anko had been about to enjoy her dango when she took her first bite. Her mouth nearly caught on fire. She went to drink all the water she could. Apparently the server had been Naruto in a henge while Temari had put the hot sauce on the dango. Naruto had been meaning to getting back at Anko for cutting his cheek and freaking him out during the Chunin exams. They later hit Kakashi, posing as a kid and their cat stuck in a tree. The Jonin had left with several scratches on his mask because of it. A couple of the more stuck-up Hyugas from the main branch ended up with paints of all different colors all over them. A person who had made a anti-Suna remark against Temari ended up hanging upside down with their pants around their ankles. A few other things as well. Before they took a break, they were resting on a bench and Temari had to admit she had a lot of fun, despite herself. "See, told ya it was fun," Naruto said, grinning at her. Okay, so you were right," Temari told him, still smiling. It felt good in a way to cut loose. She never got the chance to do anything like that, plus Naruto was very good at it. "How often did you do this?" "Oh, I used to prank people all the time," Naruto said proudly. "A few times I never even got caught, but my best prank was the one I pulled before I graduated." "Do I want to know?" she asked in good humor. "See that mountain range with the faces of all the Hokages?" Naruto asked her. "I painted it all up after an hour. I had to get up early for that one, but it was worth it." "You didn't," Temari said, both shocked and impressed that he was able to do that without anyone seeing him until it was done. "I had Jonins, Chunins and Anbu chasing me for over an hour." Naruto laughed, and despite herself, Temari gave a small laugh at that as well. She was starting to see that surprising people was a trait that Naruto had. She never would have done anything like that back home. Her father would have been so angry with her as she had painted up the side of the rock wall that shielded their village. "Well, if it isn't the dead last and the Suna girl," a slightly annoying female voice said, and instantly Naruto's mood dropped. He looked and was surprised to see two girls. Both of them had been in his class. One was Amy and he thought the other was named Haruka. Both of them were die-hard members of the Sasuke fan club. In fact, Amy was kind of a bully in class and picked on others. "Man, I'm not surprised that you get the job of marrying this girl," Haruka said, grinning. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Naruto asked her angrily. He never liked these two. That of course the dead last would get chosen for such a horrible fate. I mean, to marry this girl is laughable. She's just a peace offering so our village doesn't crush hers, although they certainly deserve it for betraying us like they did, Amy said in a dark tone. First off, little girl, Temari said, standing up to her full height, which was at least a foot taller than the other girl. My father was murdered and replaced by Orochimaru and tricked us into his plans, and as for Naruto, I don't know why you don't thank him, as he's the one that saved your village from my brother Gaara. Oh please, like he could have done anything, Haruka said, waving it away. I bet he only got in Sasuke-kun's way when he fought the Uchiha. Temari actually laughed at that. He couldn't land a blow on my brother, and Naruto was the one that beat Gaara. I should know, as I was there watching it all, and let me tell you both something, he's a lot stronger than the Uchiha boy. I don't think so, Amy yelled out at her. No one is better than Sasuke-kun. Yeah, Haruka said. Come on Temari, let's get out of here, Naruto said as he gently grabbed her wrist and led her away. Temari was fuming. It was bad enough a couple of arrogant bitches were bad-mouthing her village, but how could Naruto stand that kind of verbal abuse like that? He was clearly stronger in her view, but why did those girls not know that? Maybe it was because they were blinded by their views of Sasuke Uchiha. She had seen this all too often in her own village. Girls like that made her sick, as they weren't Roth being ninja in her opinions, and to top it all off, they hadn't even been in the Chunin exams, and Naruto had gotten into the finals on his first try. So there was no way they could look down at him, as he had accomplished more than they most likely had. She was about to demand why he didn't let her just trash those girls when she noticed the evil smirk on his face. What are you planning? Temari narrowed her eyes. Naruto's grin only grew. Why fight them when we can just get even? Later that day, Amy was walking through the village. She was still smirking about putting that Suna girl in her place. She would never forgive the Suna for what they had done. For one thing, her home had been one of the buildings damaged and her family had to start over again. It wasn't fun, and she had a lot of good memories of her home. She was about to see how her mother was doing when she froze in horror. There, not 12 feet away, was Haruka and Sasuke of all people, and they were hugging each other. Oh Sasuke-kun, I'm so glad that you agreed to go out with me, Haruka smiled at the boy. I couldn't stand it anymore. You're the most beautiful girl in the village, Sasuke said. Better than Amy. Oh please, that hag couldn't compare to you, Haruka-chan, Sasuke said as she sighed. She is pretty ugly, huh? Haruka said as both laughed. They didn't see Amy as she had ducked around the corner of a building to hear them, but she was gritting her teeth now. She couldn't believe that Haruka would say that about her, let alone steal her. Sasuke-kun. Meet me at the park in an hour, okay? Sasuke asked. Sure thing, Haruka said happily. That was enough for Amy as she stormed off. If Haruka was thinking she was getting away with this, then she had another thing coming. When she was out of sight, both Sasuke and Haruka smiled, as in a puff of smoke there stood both Naruto and Temari. Okay, we got one now, we just need to get the other one, Naruto grinned as Temari matched it. An hour later, both Temari and Naruto were waiting in the trees for their targets. They had pretty much pulled the same stunt with Haruka, so now they just had to wait for them to meet up and for the fireworks to start off. Temari had to admit this way of revenge was more work, but it was a lot more fun, plus they couldn't get into trouble for it. While doing this, she figured that her beating the hell out of a couple of genin, even if they had it coming, would look bad, so this way both girls got what was coming to them and she and Naruto were just looking on, being innocent of the whole affair. Hey, I think I see target 1, Naruto smiled. And there is the other one, Temari said, pointing as the other was walking in the opposite way towards them. When both girls saw each other, it took only for a second before both of them grew furious seeing the other girl. You bitch! Both girls yelled out as they started the verbal fighting. This caused many onlookers Both were saying how the other was a two-timer, a bad stabber, and every other name they could think of. When one of them called the other a whore, well, that was it. The fight became physical at that point as the girls went to the ground clawing at each other. This caused a few boys their age to stop. Many started whistling and catcalling at the cat fight started up, but a few chunins were in the area and pulled the girls apart eventually, although they were still kicking and screaming at the other while being held back. Well, I was hoping they would be able to fight some more, but overall I think it was good, Naruto said, smiling. Temari smiled and shook her head. Remind me never to get you pissed off to prank me. In fact, you ever do and I find out about it, you better run. Naruto smiled nervously and scratched the back of his head. Oh come on, I would never do that to you. What kind of guy do you think I am? Temari gave him a deadpan expression as she pointed at the two girls, and Naruto had to admit she made a good point. Okay, I promise that I'll never prank you, at least nothing horrible like that. Naruto said as he wanted to make sure he could keep that promise. You better keep that promise, she said. Hey, I always keep my promise, it's part of my ninja code, Naruto said proudly. Temari gave a small smile. Alright then, well, let's eat. Alright, race you to the ramen stand. Naruto jumped out of the tree heading for his usual eating place. Huh? Naruto, get back here. Temari yelled out as she had to run after the boy. She had never agreed to ramen, and if he got to that stand first she couldn't talk him out of it. They had eaten there last night and she was trying to get him to eat different foods, and for some strange reason she felt that he planned this part out as well. Naruto was standing in the Hokage's office, not even sure why he was called here. It had been after training when the message got to their team that he was to be called into the Hokage's office as soon as possible. He was kind of disappointed that he had to, since Temari had loosened up a bit since the pranking they had done, and he had been wondering if he could have found something else fun for them to do. She seemed a bit more settled into things as well, although she was still a bit serious, but he hoped that he could help with that. But now he was standing in front of Tsunade's desk as she was going through a pile of papers that Shizune had put there. I can't believe how much paperwork this job has, Tsunade muttered to herself. If she had known how much work this job had, she might not have taken it. Someone arrested for public graffiti, and above all two young kunoichi brawling in the streets, Tsunade told Shizune as she was looking over the incident reports of yesterday. I tell you, I don't remember things like that happening when I was in the village, at least not this much happening. Naruto suddenly froze as he started nervously sweating. Those sounded like the pranks he and Temari had pulled. He swallowed hard as he quickly out of habit scanned for all the possible exits. He knew that he'd have to make a quick getaway if he needed it. Tsunade gave a look at Naruto. Why are you so tense? Aren't things going well with Temari? Naruto suddenly realized that since she was so new at her job and to being back in the village, his reputation for his pranks wasn't known to her, at least yet. He figured as long as he didn't say anything he was in the clear, and then hoped that when she found out about his pranks she never thought back to this day. Oh yeah, things are going okay. We're training really hard and she's showing me how to use wind nature, although it's kind of hard. I have to split a rock with my wind chakra and so far I can just put scratches on it. Well, nature elemental training was always pretty hard normally, Tsunade told him. Then how come Sasuke Tem managed to use two different types? Naruto sulked a bit. Well. Tsunade looked to Shizune for help, but she quickly made it look like she was busy with looking over the paperwork in her arms. Traitor, Tsunade thought darkly to herself before looking at awaiting Naruto. Well, kids like Sasuke are rare, and besides his clan was always good with fire elemental jutsus, so since he already knows how to use an element, it's easier once you find out what your secondary element affinity is. Oh, I guess that makes sense, Naruto thought to himself. Tsunade was glad the explanation worked on him. She wasn't sure using the term genius or prodigy would work with someone like Naruto. But now it was time to get to why she called him into her office. So Naruto, do you like Temari? The Hokage asked. Naruto scratched the back of his head. I guess so. I mean, she's teaching me some cool stuff. It's nice not living alone anymore, and thanks for the new home, by the way. She's kind of strict at times, but I think I know how to loosen her up some. Tsunade sighed. That's not what I meant. And do you find her attractive? What? Naruto said, blushing a bit. Naruto, have you even tried to go on a date with her yet? The older blonde asked the younger. Why would I? I mean, we're getting married, so what's the point? Naruto asked honestly. Tsunade felt like slamming her head into the desk at that point. How he could be so short-sighted was beyond her. She had been hoping that he would make an effort to at least court the girl so that something could develop, but Naruto had no plans at all for it. Naruto, just answer the question, do you think she's attractive? Well, I guess so, Naruto admitted. Look, Naruto, you really don't want to be put into a loveless marriage, do you? Maybe at least make an effort to take her out for a date or something. You never know. Something might happen, and it would be better if you could love each other eventually as well. Tsunade said gently to him. I know this is hard, but it will make this easier in the long run at least, plus it will make you both happier as well. Naruto looked down, thinking about it. He never really did think about his life over the years. He might be able to live with just a marriage without love, but in all honesty, it wasn't something to look forward to either. Naruto had to make a lot of changes in his life, some easier than others. He had done his best to give up on his quest to win Sakura over to him, although a part of him still cared for her and he doubted he would totally get over it. But was it really fair to live an entire life without trying to find some kind of love? Plus, what about Temari? Did she deserve the same fate? He thought about his future wife. He would admit that physically she was pretty good. Her long legs were nice, and he remembered how she looked coming out of the show with her hair all wet like that. He gulped at the memory. Okay, sure, he found her physically attractive and they were getting along. She had the same work ethic as him too, which was nice. Well, I guess I could try, Naruto wondered out loud. Tsunade smiled. So what kind of plans do you have for her? Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I never had a date. Do either of you have any ideas? Tsunade thought about it. It was better to get advice from them than someone like Jiraiya if he found out that he was looking for advice. Well, treat her nice. I mean, take her out to dinner, or just for a walk. I remember a date with Dan. He showed up with my favorite flowers and we walked to his favorite spot. It was this little bridge overlooking a lake just as the sun was setting. She sighed, remembering those days. It was a beautiful moment, and he would tell me how lucky he felt that he found me and said how he admired my abilities, my strength and my beauty. Tsunade sighed as a bit of a sadness hit her. She missed him so much at times. He was the only man that she allowed herself to fall in love with, but the pain of his death was just too much for her. She had stood over him, covered in his blood, trying to save his life, but she couldn't. She couldn't save her little brother who died on his first mission away from the village, and she couldn't save him even when she was there. Shizune looked on in sympathy for Tsunade and the fact that Dan had been her uncle too. Her parents had died when she was young and Dan had taken her in, and when he had died, Tsunade had taken her in after that. After that, they had spent the years looking after each other and was the closest thing to family she had in the world. She looked over at Naruto, who was like a lovable kid brother to her lately. Naruto-kun, just remember that girls like to be treated well, complimented, and try to be romantic if you can. Holding hands is a nice way to start, and don't forget to be a gentleman either, like holding a door open for her, pulling out a seat for her, or paying for the meal. Shizune added. And when was the last time you went out on a date? Tsunade asked with a sly smile. Shizune flinched at that. It's not my fault, I just like a certain type. Shizune, if you keep those high standards you'll never find a man, the Hokage joked as Shizune hung her head in slight depression. She hadn't even been with a man in 2 years and she hadn't found the time to date in a long time. Naruto noticed the downward look on a woman that was like an older sister to him and he didn't like it. Well, she might have had the time if you didn't drag her all over the place and running from all the people you owe money to, or dragging you home after you got drunk, Ba-chan. Naruto told the other blonde who had the good graces to blush at the mention of her less than honorable moments in her life. Shizune gave a small smile to the boy for sticking up for her and he did have a point too. With all the running around she had barely the time to date. Hell, she had left the village as a teenager and she still remembered that horrible night she decided to lose her virginity to a boy she met on the road in this village they had stopped at one night. That hadn't been a good time for her and she was glad when they left it far behind. Thankfully the very few men she found later on were much better, but she had never found Mr. Right while on the road. Maybe it was something that she could finally get around to doing now that she was now living in one spot all the time. Tsunade coughed, trying to get her dignity back. Well, anyway, try and at least make an effort with making a relationship. Above all, I just want you to be happy the best way I can. Naruto gave her one of his smaller but sincere smiles at that last part. It was good to know that there were people now that actually cared about him. Plus maybe he should at least try things out with Temari, after all they would be living their entire lives with each other. Later, Naruto went walking around the village trying to figure out things that Temari would like. So far he knew a few things about her and he was trying to figure out something nice that he could get her. Something that reminded her of her home would be perfect, but looking around there wasn't much he could find. Plus he didn't know all that much of Suna to being with other than what she had said, and it was in a desert. It was on his wondering that he noticed a flower shop and he suddenly was hit by an idea. He grinned widely as he ran to the store hoping they would be able to help him. Inside the shop there was Ino Yamanaka. Her mother had asked for help with the store today and since her team wasn't doing anything she was the one currently working the counter. She didn't mind it. She loved flowers and knew all kinds of information about them, plus she had been helping with the family business for years anyway. Today hadn't been too bad. It had a few slow periods, but overall there had been enough people coming in so she wasn't bored. She hated the slow days as it just seemed to drag on and she would rather train than just sit there doing nothing. Plus after her match with Sakura in the Chunin exams she had taken to thinking that she needed to train more. She had always been the stronger ninja, but Sakura had beaten her to a tie and it was a wake-up call in a way. Although the other good thing that came out of it was that their old friendship had started to be repaired. The door opened up with the familiar door chimes. "Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop, how can I help you?" she asked just on instinct before looking at the door. Ino. The blonde looked over and was surprised to see Naruto of all people. "What are you doing here?" Naruto asked. "What do you mean? This is my family's shop, didn't you know that?" Ino asked. Naruto actually didn't know that as he didn't really read the sign, he just saw the flowers and figured to go in. Plus he never knew that Ino's family owned a shop at any rate. Ino rolled her eyes and sighed. "Well, what can I do for you anyway?" "Oh right." Naruto remembered why he came in here for. "Do you have any dessert lilies?" Ino blinked, surprised by that. "I'll have to check, that's kind of a rare flower for here as it's not really native to our climate. But give me a moment and I'll see if I can find it." Naruto smiled broadly, hoping that Ino had the flower. While she went into the back, Naruto looked around. There were so many different types of flowers, in fact he hadn't known that there were so many flowers in the world as he looked around. When Ino came back, she was carrying a potted plant. Well, you're in luck, this is the only one we had, Ino said as she put it on the counter. Why did you want such a rare plant anyway? Well, it's for Temari, he told her, getting his frog wallet. Oh, Ino said, getting interested in this now, so giving flowers to a girl is a major thing. You like her or something? Well, it's just that, well, I was told by Tsunade Bachan that maybe I should try dating Temari before the wedding. These are actually her favorite flowers, so I figured it would be a good start. I'm surprised at you, I never figured you for someone that would be so romantic, so where are you taking her? And please tell me you are not wearing that. She pointed at his clothing. Naruto frowned and looked at his favorite jumpsuit. What's wrong with this? Where do I start? Ino said dryly. Look, you want some advice for dating from a girl's point of view. Naruto thought about it. He didn't really know what he was doing, but any helpful advice was good. Shizune and Tsunade had helped him out, but he really wanted to get all the help he could get, as he wanted this to go really well. Plus, it wasn't like he knew many girls that could help him out as well. Okay. So what do I need to know? Naruto asked her eagerly. Ino smirked as for the next few hours Naruto got more than he bargained for. Temari's room. Temari sighed as she placed her battle fan against the wall and sat down. She had done some extra training with her fan to the afternoon and now she felt a bit tired. She looked in her mirror and her eyes went to the picture of her and her brothers. She had taken it before she left the village. In it she was giving a small smile. Kankuro was smirking and Gaara, well, he looked as neutral as ever, but you could tell he was more relaxed in the picture. Placed near it was her old forehead protector. Sometimes she would trace the outline of the symbol put on it as a reminder of where she came from. Not that she really needed it, but it helped to ease the small pain of being away from home. She sighed and closed her eyes, and for a moment she thought she could smell the scent of desert lilies. Wait a minute, she thought as her eyes opened up. The smell was way too strong for a memory, and she looked around, and there by the window was a potted plant with, of all things, her favorite flowers. She sat there shocked and dumbfounded for a moment before going to it. She saw there was a card along with it and took it as she read it. Hey Temari, I hope you like the flowers, I know you like them. If you're not doing anything, you want to go out tonight? I want to take you someplace special to me. I'm getting some things ready just in case, so I'll be back before 4. She smiled as it was sighed Naruto at the end. She had to admit this was one of the nicest things someone had done. She sniffed the flowers, enjoying their scent. It was a very thoughtful gift and she had to admit that she liked it. She looked back at the note and then read the last part over again as something hit her. Is he asking me out? Temari thought, looking at the wording. It sounded like it, although she supposed it could have been taken the wrong way, but why would he ask her out when they were already going to be married? Unless maybe the boy actually liked her and wanted to ask her out. That made Temari's cheeks blush a bit, mainly due to the fact that no one had even had the courage to ask her out before. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, Temari thought to herself, but just in case she went to shower and change her clothing. She decided to pick something that was nice and yet not too nice. She wanted to look good because they were going out, but not too much in case it wasn't a date. By the time she was finished, she was in a black version of her dress that she wore when she first came to this village. There were a few differences, but it still held a skirt, and she wore a different pair of the leg stockings, a matching set on her legs that covered her legs. She decided just a slight shade of lipstick would be good enough and nothing else. She checked the clock and found that she was going to run late, and she was anything but someone that was late. Temari debated taking her fan, but she doubted she would need it this time and went downstairs. Naruto had been waiting, hoping that Temari would agree to this. Then he heard someone coming down the stairs and looked up. As she came down the stairs, he had to admit that she really was pretty, and black somehow looked good on her. He was glad that he took some of the advice that Ino told him and changed himself, seeing how Temari looked a bit better than normal. He had gotten rid of his favorite orange jumpsuit and went with some of the few clothing he did have that wasn't that. He found an old pair of jean shorts and he wore his black t-shirt with the orange swirl marking on it. He also put away his headband for it as well. Temari gave a small smile seeing Naruto out of his orange suit. He looked different when not wearing that suit of his, plus his hair looked a bit more wild without the headband there. She made a mental note to try and get him some more clothing one of these days. Thanks for the flowers, Temari told him. He gave a huge grin as he scratched the back of his head. Glad you were happy with them. I know how you missed your home and stuff and remembered how you talked about those flowers. Well, you didn't have to go to all the trouble, but thanks anyway. So what is this thing you had in mind for us? Well, Naruto didn't think this would be so hard. After all, they were going to be married, right? But he could feel his face heating up a bit. I just thought that we should try and, well, date. Temari raised an eyebrow at that. She really hadn't thought about it. Although it wasn't like she had any experience with dating given her family, no one had been brave enough to go and ask her out, so she ended up just giving up on dating and focused on her ninja training. Then the next thing she knew, she was getting married and figured she would never have to go through it all. But now Naruto was asking her out on a date. She felt a bit touched that he would ask that and was glad she dressed up a bit. She might as well try it, as she figured this might be the only date she ever got in life. Alright, so what do you have in mind? She asked, surprising Naruto. Well, come on, I wanted to show you a special spot of mine, he told her as he grabbed a few items that he had fixed up for it. They eventually ended up on the Hokage monument on the top of the fourth's head. Temari had to admit that the last thing she thought he would take her was up here, and also that he would be making a picnic of all things. She watched as Naruto set things up. Temari was also wondering if they were even allowed to do this and kept looking to see if any Anbu would be coming any minute to take them away. Hey, it's all ready, Naruto called to her. Well, if we're going to jail for this, then we might as well get something to eat, Temari thought as she sat down next to him. Overall, it was a nice setup and the view was nice up here. She looked at the food and it looked pretty good. In fact, it looked better than what Naruto normally cooked. She was wondering how he was able to cook so well until she noticed something in the basket. So you cooked this yourself? She asked him. Oh yeah, I sure did. Pretty good, huh? Naruto asked her, smiling proudly. Oh yeah, if I didn't know any better I would have sworn this was store-bought stuff, Temari told him, giving him a sly smile. Naruto stiffened a bit and gave a nervous laugh. What? No way. Why would you say that? Then Temari got a small smile and pulled out a cup that had a store brand name on it. Naruto gulped nervously as he mentally cursed himself for getting careless. He had thought he had managed to get rid of all of the things that would have shown where he bought the food. Don't worry about it, Temari told him, putting it away. It's the thought that counts anyway. Naruto chuckled nervously. Sorry, I just wanted to make his nice. This is actually my first date with a girl. Well, it's my first time too, so don't sweat it, she said. Naruto looked at her for a moment. How come? I mean, you're smart, strong and, well, pretty. So how come you haven't been on any dates before? She actually blushed a bit when he said she was pretty. No boy had actually done that before that she could think of. She looked down at her food to avoid him seeing it, as she thought if she should tell him. In the end, she decided she might as well and told her of how the boys were too intimidated by her to ask her to date. Naruto actually looked sad for that. He never figured that someone with a family could still be lonely, and he could tell. From the way she talked about her childhood, he could just tell. After all, he had a lonely childhood himself, and maybe that was why he could see that part of her as she was talking. Naruto then brightened up. Well then I guess I'll just have to make it up to you by giving you the best dates I can do. Then he looked a little uncertain, that is if you still want to. Well, so far it's been nice, Temari said, not sure what she felt about it. Let's just play it by ear then. So this is your special spot, huh? Yeah. Naruto's face took on a more serious look as he looked over the village. I sometimes come up here when I need to get away or to think. Plus looking over the village reminds me of my dream. To be Hokage. Temari stated. Naruto nodded his head. I originally wanted to be Hokage for people to recognize me and respect me, but I learned that to be Hokage means more than that. It means that you put your life on the line to protect everyone in the village, and I know I'm not the smartest or the most well-liked, but this is still my home and I'll do everything to protect this village and my precious people. As he was talking, the sun was setting down over the city, casting a light over the area, and from her viewpoint Naruto almost looked like he was bathed in light for a moment. The way the light hit him as he looked over the village for some reason captivated her as she listened to him. I promised myself that I would become greater than any of the other Hokages, to protect my precious people and to ensure that everyone in the village is protected, and I always keep my promises. It's my nindo, my way of the ninja. He really means it, Temari thought as she just stared at the genin in front of her. The look of intensity in his eyes were like a fire, no more like a maelstrom. That was the perfect thing for this boy. He was full of energy and power, he was unrelenting and never let anything get in his way. She remembered his fights against Gaara and how he had learned the Rasengan as well. There was so much potential in the boy, and for some reasons she felt drawn to it. It was like a burning sun, full of light and power and above all warmth. She felt her cheeks heat up slightly, but then the light started to die down and the magic of the moment went with it. She controlled herself before he noticed, and as they continued on she had to admit that he had got her interest. He was certainly not like other boys, and maybe being married to him might not be so bad after all. It was still too soon to tell, but for the first time she had hoped that this wouldn't be so bad an arrangement. Naruto was glad that the first date had gone well. She had seemed to enjoy herself and it had been nice. He was happy that his first real date had gone so well. He had kept expecting something to go wrong, but besides the fact she found out his little secret with the food, it hadn't been so bad. They had finished up and cleaned things up on his insistence, odd for a boy that once painted up the heads, but he had a newfound respect for the Hokages since the third had died and he wanted to keep it clean. It was late by the time they got back and he was glad to see her actually smiling a bit, so he guessed that she had enjoyed herself. He was about to put the basket away when he had to say goodnight to Temari first. So I hope you enjoyed tonight, Naruto said a little nervously. Temari gave him a small smile. Yeah, it was fun. So, maybe you'd like to do it again sometime after all. To his surprise, she bent down and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. I think I'll enjoy it, good night. It had been a few days since their first date, and so far things were going well with the two soon-to-be married couple. Sure, there were the few things like how sometimes they had to race to get to the good bathroom, Temari telling him that he should stop throwing things around at random places and putting them away properly. Naruto also didn't like how she had so many products out on the sink all the time, and also how she didn't let him eat enough ramen. But even with the small issues they managed to get through them. After all, life wasn't perfect. With the team training and going out on a simple dinner date, things between them were slowly growing. At the moment they were in their backyard as she was helping him with wind training. Both were sitting down as he had a rock between his hands, trying as hard as he could to cut it in two. It just wasn't that easy. The rock was pretty solid and he was finding it difficult to keep his wind element stable. Ah, damn it! Naruto yelled out as he lost his concentration again. Temari sighed. She wished that Naruto would learn some patience. The boy kept expecting to get everything done right on the first try. Naruto, How many times have I told you to relax? You can't just keep going at it without thinking or concentrating. I'm trying. Naruto snapped out, glaring at the rock in his hands. Don't snap at me, mister, just because you're frustrated, Temari said, slightly angry. Naruto sighed and nodded. Sorry, I didn't mean it, but it's just so hard. I mean, how come I did shadow clones in one night and the Rasengan in a month but not get anywhere with this? Well, first off, Temari started to explain. From what Kakashi said, you're unique when it comes to shadow clones. Even I haven't even tried to learn that one yet. Now as for Rasengan, well, maybe you're more talented with shape manipulation, plus this isn't supposed to be easy anyway. Temari got up and got behind him and laid her hands on his shoulders. She felt him tense up in surprise at the contact. Just relax, okay? You can't do this if you're all tense. Naruto swallowed as he tried to calm his mind, but it was kind of hard to do at the moment. He tried not to think of her hands and how light their touch was against him, or that fact he could smell the scent of her hair as she was this close to him. A girl had never been this close to him and he was a little nervous about it, but he tried to push that aside and think of wind chakra. She had explained how it was supposed to feel and the shape he was supposed to have in his mind about it. As his mind was wondering, he heard a small crack and looked startled at his hands. He saw a small crack had formed in the rock and he got a huge smile on his face. Hey, look, I did it, Naruto said, showing her the rock. You cracked it. It's a step in the right direction, but don't get yet, she told him with a smirk. She straightened up, stretching out her back. I think I'll go in and relax in some nice hot water. Okay, I'll want to keep at this for a bit longer, Naruto smiled as he went back to his work. Temari wasn't surprised. Naruto trained to the point that went beyond what a normal person would do. In fact, she was actually starting to push herself as well. His attitude seemed to be a bit infectious with her, plus she didn't want to be left behind either. As she went into the house, Naruto looked at his rock and kept on trying to picture how wind-natured chakra was supposed to be and feel it out. He wanted to cut the rock in half soon so he could start learning all kinds of kick-ass wind elemental jutsus. He lost track of how long he was into his training, but so far he couldn't get the hang of it. He tried to relax, but each time he failed at getting the results, the more frustrated he got. After a while he took a break as he glared at the rock. It was like it was mocking him, but he would show it who was boss. So how have you been, kid? Naruto jumped and turned around to see Jiraiya standing behind him. Naruto hadn't seen the old pervert in a while and smiled a bit seeing him. Things are going good, Ero Sennin, Naruto said. The Toad Sage scowled a bit. Damn it, how many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me that? Naruto just ignored it and held up his rock. Look, I managed to get it to crack. A bit more training and I'll be able to learn all kinds of kick moves. Jiraiya stood closer as he looked at the rock. It wasn't much for progress, but for a boy his age to be learning to do elemental training after shape training was impressive. But he also didn't want to give the kid a swelled head. The boy already had problems with that and he needed to learn to keep that in check. Not bad, but you still got a lot of work ahead of you. He could see Naruto looked a bit disappointed. So then, how are things going with that Suna girl? Anything interesting? Naruto was surprised by the sudden change in topic as he scratched the back of his head. Well, Tsunade Bachan wants me to take her on dates to get to know her more. Jiraiya chuckled a bit. He never knew his old teammate liked to play matchmaker. So how have you been doing on that front? Naruto blushed a bit as he went through the dates they had so far. He talked about the first one on top of the Hokage monument. Naruto thought back to that date and he had to admit that she was pretty that day, and he also remembered how she walked up those steps, causing him to blush at the memory. When he was talking about the others, he suddenly heard perverted giggling and scratching noises. He turned to see Jiraiya was grinning as he was scribbling down notes. What the hell? Naruto yelled at him. Hey, don't stop now, Jiraiya said as he kept on making notes. This is good stuff, kid. I didn't know you had it in you. You keep this up and I think I'll make my next book on this. Ah, I can see it now. Ika Ika Princess, the story of a boy trying to win the heart of an exotic princess from another land to prevent a war. It will have action, adventure, romance, and it could be my next big seller. You're not making one of your perverted books about me and Temari. Naruto yelled as he tried to grab the notes. Come on, kid, I'll cut you in for a percentage then, he told the boy as he tried to keep his notes. Give me that, Naruto yelled out. Inside, Temari was enjoying the hot water. The way it soothed her made her wish that Suna had enough water to spare for something like this. Although this was their small personal onsen, she didn't dare go in. She had bought a small bathing suit to use when she was in here. Besides, what if company came over, or what if Naruto walked in on her? That incident with the shower had been embarrassing enough. She blushed remembering that moment. Sure, they were going to be married, but that didn't mean she was ready to have any man see her just yet. She took the time to relax and think on things. So far it wasn't so bad how things were going in her life. It was still strange and she knew she might never totally get used to living in this village, but it was getting better. Another thing she was thinking about was Naruto. The boy kept on surprising her. He wasn't all that bright at times, and yet he could do something insightful as well. In some areas he was weak, but in others he was so far ahead of everyone it just made no sense to her logical mind. Maybe that was why she was starting to find him so interesting. He was like a living puzzle, and everything she felt she was getting close to solving it, Naruto would do something that would change all of that. Another thing was that he treated her pretty well. She had been expecting when she heard of this whole arrangement to act the perfect housewife. A fate she would have hated and most likely had rathered herself within the year, but he never once told her to do anything, he always asked her first. Plus apparently he had a thing about being put into place by strong female types. With how Sakura popped him on the head and how Tsunade threw something at his head for the few times she had seen when he just barged into her office and called her Bachan, Temari was starting to think the boy was a masochist. On the bright side, with all of that, she could control him when he got out of line. Although at times he could be very stubborn person as well. Her mind went to their dates that they had, and she was surprised at how much she enjoyed her time with the boy. Temari had never had the chance for a dating life, but so far Naruto was making up for it. He tried so hard that it was very sweet as well. Damn it, Ero Sennin. Naruto's loud voice broke her out of her calming thoughts as she heard an argument going on outside. Her left eye twitched a bit at being disturbed. She gave a small growl of annoyance and picked up a towel and quickly dried herself off as she put it around her waist to go see what the problem was. She made it to the back door and moved it open, and there was Naruto wrestling with some old man over some kind of papers. What the hell is going on here? She demanded angrily. Naruto jumped in surprised, and Jiraiya took the opportunity to get back his previous notes. Naruto scowled at him as he started to answer Temari. Ero Sennin here was being a pervert again. He wanted to. He trailed off as he went to look at her. There was Temari, slightly wet, her hair still damp and hung down close to her face. She only had on a towel and a swimming top on that he could see. He blushed deeply as he had never seen her with so much skin showing. Jiraiya on the other hand noticed the boy's look and had to admit the girl was a lovely young thing, pity she was too young for him. He slapped the boy on the back hard enough to cause the boy to fall forward. Nice catch, Gaki, you got a real winner with that one. What the hell is that supposed to mean, and who the hell are you? Temari demanded. Allow me to introduce myself. Jiraiya got into his usual stance as he became the weird dance of his. I am the sage of Mount Myobokuzan, the toad hermit, the one that the ladies adore and swoon over his charm and power. I am one of the legendary three, I am Jiraiya the Sannin. Temari blinked a couple of times, then 4 times and then 5 more times before she said anything. You're supposed to be the Jiraiya, she said deadpanned. She just couldn't understand why the Leaf Village seemed to have the most bizarre collection of ninja in the entire world. That I am, my dear, and you must be the Temari girl that my new apprentice is going to marry. Jiraiya was already taking notes in his head to make the princess in his story a blonde with a fiery temper. Although many might confuse the character with another character of his, Ayane, which was based on Tsunade, well, nothing a little editing of the character couldn't fix. I am, Temari told him. So what's all this about? At that, Naruto snapped out of his daze seeing Temari in that state of dress and pointed accusingly at Jiraiya. He was going to make one of his perverted books about us and I was trying to stop him. His what? Temari glared at the man. Ero Sennin is the guy that writes those books that you see Kakashi-sensei reading, Naruto told her, crossing his arms over his chest. Temari got an angry tick on her eye as she glared at the old man. Jiraiya, after a lifetime of knowing Tsunade, had developed an instinct about angry women. He could already see that this girl shared a few of his teammates' attributes, although it was too bad that Tsunade's most visual appealing attributes weren't there for Naruto to enjoy, but the anger this woman had was just like Tsunade. Temari was coming to terms with marrying Naruto, leaving her village and living here, but having one of those perverted books written about her was crossing a line. There was no way she could hold her head up high if people found out about that, and her reputation could be ruined. Now she really wished she had her battle fan handy, as she had an urge to slam it into his skull. Got it, Naruto shouted as he managed to snag the notes from Jiraiya's hand while he was busy with Temari. Damn it, that could be my best work yet, you brat. Jiraiya yelled out as he started to chase Naruto around the yard. I don't think so, Naruto yelled out as he made his favorite hand seal, and suddenly a large amount of white smoke showed up. When it was gone, there were at least over a dozen Narutos as they ran off in different directions. Jiraiya cursed as he picked one out and started to chase it. They all left the backyard and Temari smirked as she had to admit, Naruto came up with a good plan, and was further impressed when a rock suddenly turned back into Naruto. He was grinning happily as he used his shadow clones to get rid of Jiraiya while he had turned into a rock. Temari came up behind him. Niece, that should keep him busy for a while. How long do your clones last anyway? Naruto wondered about it as he shrugged. I have no idea, usually I get rid of them or they hit something. Then he turned around and blushed as he was face to face with Temari, and given their difference in height he had a good view of her chest. His eyes were just drawn to the cleavage in front of him and he couldn't look away. Temari suddenly noticed what he was looking at and quickly crossed her arms. Hey, eyes up, she yelled, and Naruto took a step back. Sorry, I didn't meant to, Naruto said as both teens were blushing hugely. Hentai, Temari shouted as she started to chase Naruto around as he started to run from her. What they didn't know was that in one of the trees Jiraiya was watching them. He giggled as he was writing down on a spare notepad, if Naruto could think he could get one on him after years of being a pervert, the boy was in for a surprise. He let the boy think that he had grabbed the real notes and chased a clone just long enough to get out of sight. He couldn't help but chuckle as he watched the two, and his mind was reminded of a similar moment between Naruto's parents. Minato had accidentally crashed into Kushina and a hand had landed on that girl had chased the poor boy all over the village before she caught him. He giggled as he started to write down more scenes. He couldn't wait to get this book out. Elsewhere, Kakashi Hatake was having a hard time, although you would never know it from just looking at him. He was sitting in his small apartment trying to read his book, but he just kept on reading the same page over and over again. He eventually put it away as he sat up and sighed. He was both happy and not so happy with how things were turning out for his team. Temari was helping both Naruto and Sakura in ways he never expected. She was helping both with their taijutsu, and he was helping out here and there as well with hints and improvements. Temari's training in Wind Elemental was going to help Naruto out a lot as well when he got the hang of it. Kakashi also managed to get a couple of water elemental jutsus for Sakura to start training in, as he could help her out with that. The only major problem was Sasuke. The boy was being more withdrawn and his quest for power had only gotten worse since that curse mark. In fact, the boy's behavior had changed a lot since the Forest of Death, and not in the good way. The boy had been coming along, and if things had kept as they were, he might have started to open up and changed for the best. But Orochimaru had ruined that, and now the man was after the boy. Sasuke already was one of the strongest genin, knew 2 different elemental attacks, which was something someone didn't learn until they made Jonin, but it still wasn't enough, it would seem. He wanted to learn shape manipulation, but he wanted Sasuke to learn other things before that. Like what it meant to be part of a team and that he didn't have to go through it all alone. Plus he had already spent a month training Sasuke and he needed to round out the team more before he could even consider that, but Sasuke wasn't the patient type. Kakashi looked at the window and he saw the plant that Naruto had given him a while back. He smiled at how the boy had grown it himself and given it to him. Kakashi had gotten a book on plants to make sure he took care of it as well, as a present from students should be honored. He was glad that Temari was helping him out, as the boy needed the extra help as his schooling was lacking in the academy. He was secretly glad when Naruto got Iruka as a teacher. Sakura, he definitely needed to get that girl someone that could be a role model for her. She could become great if she was become more serious as a ninja, and she could go far. Temari was already an impressive ninja, but her weakness was her weakness in closer quarters so far. But then his mind ran back to Sasuke and how that seal was on him. That counter seal that he had put on Sasuke would only work with the power of that person's will, but there were 2 facts that were also in play. The first being that he wasn't a seal master like the 4th of Jiraiya were. Sure, he knew more than most, but he wasn't an expert. The other thing was that the curse seal was Orochimaru's personal design and no one other than him knew all that much about it. Maybe if he knew something more about it, then he could help out more and make sure that Sasuke's mark was totally repressed, but the only person that knew anything was a missing nin that would not help out. Then he suddenly remembered that there was another person he could ask, that is if she wanted to. Kakashi got his vest and put it on, more out of habit than anything else, and jumped out his window and started his search. Hopefully she was still in the village and not on some mission. He knew a bit about the ninja in question, but not much. He respected her skills and he had worked with her a few times in the past. Sure, she was a bit eccentric, but she wasn't that all that bad. She just liked to have some fun. Unfortunately, besides a few things and that she was close friends with Kurenai, there wasn't much he knew of the younger woman. It wasn't until an hour later, when he felt like he would have to seek out Kurenai for information, that he found his target. There she was, coming out of a dango shop, eating the last of said treat. Anko had been having a nice relaxing break so far. Nothing major was going on with all the reconstruction going on. Thankfully her apartment had survived being crushed by a giant snake, the buildings next to hers not so much, so she needed to get out when the construction started. There was just no way for her to sleep in or relax with all that racket going on, but at least she wasn't homeless like some of the more unfortunate ones. She had spent the day shopping for some new supplies, some food, and looking for something interesting to wear as well. Hopefully there might be a mission soon, as she was starting to get a little bored though, something to at least keep things interesting. Hello there, Anko. She stopped at the smooth and relaxed voice behind her as she turned to see one, Kakashi Hatake behind her. She grinned seeing the man. He defiantly was looking to make things interesting as Kakashi was never boring. Plus he had that little firecracker on his team as well. So what is it? Anko asked him to the point. Kakashi gave an amused smile. Glad to see you too, but honestly I need your help with something that only you can do. Now Anko was smiling a bit more. What's the name, and do you want that person still breathing? Nothing like that, Kakashi told her and her shoulders slumped in disappointment. I need your help for a student of mine. Anko blinked and thought about it for a second. Oh, which one? Sasuke, Kakashi said in a more serious tone. Now Anko's mood took a bit of a darker turn. She knew all about what had happened in the Forest of Death between her old teacher and Sasuke, and she knew his plans for the Uchiha. She suddenly felt a brief twitch where her own curse mark was on her neck. She shifted a little as her shoulder rolled, but Kakashi caught it. He nodded as he saw her eyes. Yeah, I need your help with his curse seal. I don't know enough about it and I'm afraid that the counter seal I put on isn't working that well. Counter seal? There's a counter and no one told me. Anko said a little more dangerously. Kakashi held up his hands in defense. I had to rush to put it on and I wasn't sure how well it would work. Plus he seemed to be having a hard time with it and I never seen you have any issues with yours, so assumed it was fine. I'm also surprised that the third never mentioned it as I did report it to him. Anko let a deep sigh go as she let her anger go as well. She knew better than that, and if there was a problem with the boys then it might not work well with her anyway. But still it stung a bit that the old man never told her that Kakashi was experimenting with a counter. Sure, her own seal didn't always activate, but she had to constantly be on guard if it ever did. And the few times it did react it was painful and left her vulnerable like in the Forest of Death. Anko, Kakashi asked seeing how she was. I'm fine, Anko said looking up at him. If I help you with this you think you can help me? Kakashi rubbed his chin. It might not be too much of a problem, although I might have to get someone else to put it on you as I'm not sure you'll let me try anything what I used on Sasuke. Why is that? Anko demanded, her hands on her hips. So, why are we walking to the Hokage's tower? Anko asked as she noticed where Kakashi was walking. She had agreed to help him since she figured it would be a nice way of sticking it to Orochimaru if she could foul up any plans he was making for the Uchiha boy. I need Tsunade-sama to see if she can find Jiraiya, Kakashi said to her. I'm good, but he's a true seal master after all. He taught the fourth many of his sealing techniques and knowledge, so having his help would be good. Anko nodded as that made sense to her, although once again she felt a small pang on why he wasn't called in for her. Then again she did remember Tsunade had been looking in on her when they had found her lost and confused. It was one of the reasons that Anko was glad that Tsunade was the new Hokage, as she had a huge respect for the woman. She had been a big help in Anko's recovery, and so Anko felt she owed the woman a lot. So what can you tell me about your seal? Kakashi asked as they kept on walking. Anything you can think of would be helpful. Anko sighed as she thought about anything she could think of. Well, it hurts like a bastard for me at times. Like when I was with Orochimaru in the forest I could barely move. Did he start the seal or do you think it was reacting to his presence? Anko hadn't thought which it was at the time. She was more focused on just trying to the bastard. She thought about all that he took from her. The uncertainty of what had happened to her plagued her for years, with all the missing holes in her memories. All the memories of when Orochimaru became her sensei were just gone, and it hurt a lot. Every day she wondered if there was a face in the crowd she had known, or had she any good memories buried up inside her mind. Every time she tried to think, it would hurt her, and then she only got angrier. Anko thought about her fight with Orochimaru and all that pain and anger, all that hatred built up in her. Ah! Anko winced as the mark on her neck throbbed. What is it? Kakashi asked her, helping her to steady herself. Just a flash of pain, I get them now and then. She told him, pushing him away when she could stand. She hated being seen as weak among others. Kakashi was silent a moment as he thought about something. What was it you were feeling? What was I feeling? Kakashi nodded. Please describe your emotions at that moment. Anko didn't know what he was getting at. I felt anger, a lot of it. I was remembering how I was feeling in my fight with Orochimaru and then the pain started. Just anger. What do you want to hear? Anko asked, getting annoyed. Because you're a bit angry now and seem fine, so is there anything more than just anger? Hatred. I was feeling hatred, Anko told him. Kakashi nodded as if something was fitting into place. Tell me, is Orochimaru the only thing that you truly hate? Okay, what the hell are you getting at? Anko demanded. She wasn't liking all the questions. Sure, she agreed to help, but this was reminding her a bit too much like when she had been interrogated when she had been brought back to the village. She didn't like that time she had spent there in the dark cells as they were trying to see if she was a traitor or not. I think the seal reacts to very dark emotions. Kakashi started to tell her his theory. Hatred seems to be a key in activating it. If you truly hate the man, then the seal must have activated when it felt your hate growing. It sounds logical given what Sasuke's motivation is with his brother. Hatred for his clan and family, Anko said softly as it started to make sense to her as well. Orochimaru was just the sort of twisted person to make a seal that feed on negative emotions. Sure, she felt anger at times, but the seal never activated, and people say they hate something, but was that true hatred? She wanted to Orochimaru, she wanted to make him pay and for him to suffer like she had. Her hand went to her neck, feeling the spot where the seal was. It could be at least one of the keys to the seal, Kakashi said, breaking her out of her own thoughts. There might be other emotions that will trigger it, but that can be done for another time. However, do you sometimes feel this pain at other moments? Anko nodded her head. After certain bad dreams it hurts, not much but enough to be very annoying. Also, I think it does react to Orochimaru's presence. During the start of the fight I could feel it, but I could ignore it. It wasn't until later that it got too much for me. So heightened emotional states do affect it, and I'm not surprised that Orochimaru would cause it as well as he did give it to you. Kakashi told her. Great, so what does this mean? I got to control my emotions, like that would happen, Anko muttered to herself. She would be the first to admit that she was pretty much a free spirit. Sure, ninja weren't supposed to show emotions, but that just wasn't the type she was. In a serious mission she could control herself, she had that much discipline, but total control wasn't her. She cast a look to Kakashi, who always seemed to have so much control, and wondered how he was able to do it. Well, we'll just think a way around it then. Kakashi turned to her, and from how his eye was closed she could tell he was smiling at her. She nodded, although she wasn't sure how he would, but she felt a bit better otherwise. Later that day, it was late afternoon by the time Kakashi showed up. Even though he had a valid excuse, his genins, mainly Sakura and Naruto, hadn't believed about helping a fellow ninja out. He didn't go into details about what exactly he was doing, as he wasn't sure how Sasuke would react to him working on that seal of his again. The boy was becoming slightly worse, it seemed, and he was keeping a careful eye on him just in case. He had no idea what Sasuke was thinking or would do, but the path the boy was walking down worried him. Training went well for the most part. Sakura was coming along fine with her water manipulation. In fact, with her perfect chakra control she was getting the hang of it faster than Kakashi would have thought. All she lacked was the stamina and chakra supply. Sasuke was still slightly brooding, but he seemed preoccupied with something lately, but Kakashi couldn't tell with what. Naruto and Temari were proving to be forming good teamwork, most likely due to the living arrangements and the extra training she was helping him with. Since Kakashi was meeting up with Anko later on and hopefully Jiraiya, he had to make it a shorter day than normal. Sasuke went off as usual, but Sakura asked Temari if she could help her train a bit more. Temari didn't know much about the girl and figured since they were on the same team they might as well try to get to know each other more. So she told Naruto she would be home later. As Sakura trained with Temari, her respect for the older girl was growing. Although Temari used a fan mostly in battle, her hand-to-hand skills were better than Sakura's. She was coming along with the water jutsu that Kakashi had been teaching her and she almost had it, but she lacked enough chakra to do it more than a few times. But she was improving. She used to only be able to do it 3 times, but lately she pushed it up to 5. Temari was another big help. The woman was helping her in taijutsu and Sakura could notice some improvements. She learned a lot of things that they never taught at the academy. One thing she learned was when you punch with a hook to keep your elbow up, so if you miss with the fist you can get your elbow in next. You could also catch the brow of your opponent with that elbow. You can bust open the skin, making blood flow into the eye. After a while both of them were getting tired as Temari called for a break. Sakura was thankful as she felt like she was about to drop any second anyway. Both girls rested up against a tree, just enjoying the time to relax. "You're getting better," Temari commented to the other girl. "Really? I still feel like I need to go a lot further." "Yeah, you're right," Temari said as Sakura seemed to deflate at that. "But at the rate you're training it will take less time. What were you doing all that time anyway before now? I mean, if you trained like this since you started the academy then you should be stronger." "Oh, well," Sakura bit her lip, remembering how she had spent a lot of her free time trying to pursue Sasuke. "Oh brother," Temari sighed, "don't tell me you were one of those girls chasing after the Uchiha boy. So instead of training that could help you and your team survive, you chased after a boy. Real smart." "Well, Sasuke is worth it," Sakura defended herself. "Worth getting over?" Temari snapped at her. "This isn't a game. People will die on missions. I mean, Naruto had to save you from my brother while your precious Uchiha couldn't do jack. Tell me, do you always need to be rescued in your missions or do anything?" Sakura wanted to say she did a lot of things, but she couldn't think of anything. Hell, she hadn't even thought it was Naruto who had rescued her at first. In fact, during the Forest of Death it had been Naruto that came out of nowhere to save them from Orochimaru. She had tried to take care of the boys when they were both taken out, but she hadn't done much. Sure, she had set up traps and had done everything she could have done. She had fought her hardest. She had bled and got hurt bad to protect her teammates, but she still had to be saved, this time by Lee. It was then that she realized she needed to be stronger to support her team instead of being a burden. Temari saw the girl's face. She knew that she was harsh, but she was on this team now and the girl needed to face the facts. "Look, at least you're trying to improve." "I know you're right and I am trying," Sakura said weakly. "It's just that I'm always watching their backs. Even Naruto, who was the dead last, is stronger than me now." "Well, he's surprising, so don't feel too bad." Temari gave a small smile, thinking back. "First time I met him I didn't think much of him at all. Just an idiot with a very loud mouth and who wore too much orange." Sakura giggled at that. "Yeah, you really should try to get him to wear something else at times." Temari rolled her eyes. "Trust me, I've been trying. Somehow I don't think Naruto would be Naruto without some orange in his life. And being a little dense and loud." Sakura commented as Temari gave a small nod. "He is surprising though," Temari sighed as she looked to the sky. "He never gives up and he's actually kind of sweet at times. He cares a lot for his friends and those people that are precious to him." Sakura nodded, remembering all the things Naruto had done. She felt bad for being mean to him when they were at school together, and now she was considering him to be a very good friend. When Ino and her had stopped being friends, she had been very lonely, and she felt bad for making Naruto feel the same. Maybe if she had known what she did now, they could have at least been friends for each other. Well, I can fix that now at least, Sakura thought. So then, how are things going with you and Naruto? Sakura asked the older girl. Temari gave a small blush as she looked away. We're doing fine. He tried so hard on the dates, it's nice, but I keep telling him to just be himself. But he is a nice guy, but I don't know much about him. Was he always like this? Temari thought she might be able to get some more information about Naruto through Sakura. She knew little of his past and figured since she was a teammate she would know more. Sakura wasn't sure how to answer that at first. Well, I'm not sure. We were never really friends before now. How come? He seems like a decent guy, Temari asked, confused. Well, mainly it was just that a lot of the kids didn't hang out with him. He used to pull all kinds of pranks and stuff, and he would act out. I also heard a lot of parents telling their kids to stay away from him, but I never knew why. I heard kids asking their parents that same question, but I never heard a real answer. Temari got a small scowl on her face hearing that. Okay, what the hell is the deal with this? I've noticed people glaring my way at times, but lately it's also at him. At first I thought it was just because he was with me, but I keep hearing stuff like this. There is something going on here and I want to figure out what's going on. Whatever was going on, Temari wanted to figure out what was going on. With Naruto. Naruto was on his way home with his mind on things. He had to change his route as he found himself walking to his old apartment complex, and not for the first time. It would take some getting used to living in a new place, it would seem. But still, so far life was okay. The house was coming along and it was nice having someone with him all the time, and he felt that he and Temari were at least becoming nice friends. It was just nice waking up and having someone there. He hadn't realized just how empty his old apartment was. Sure, he had things, but until now he never knew what it was like having someone living with him. Naruto knew loneliness as he had been alone for most of his life, but looking back on his old life now made that time seem even darker than he thought. It was a depressing thought, but he quickly brightened as he thought of how he would never had to go back to that kind of life. His thoughts were suddenly ripped from him as he felt someone gripping his jumpsuit and pulled him to face them. He was surprised to see Ino was the one there. Ino, what the hell? So how are things going? Ino asked, grinning. With what? Ino scowled a little at him. What do you mean with what? With Temari, of course. Oh. Naruto blushed a bit as he scratched the back of his head. Things are going good. We've gone on a few dates so far and she seemed to enjoy herself. He didn't want to mention the whole thing with Jiraiya and how she had chased him around for a bit after she caught him staring at her s. But in his defense, how was he not to look? They were practically at eye level with him and she was wearing a two-piece at the time. So how has my advice been working out? Ino asked him. Have you gotten her any gifts or done something really nice for her? Well, a few things, but how many gifts do I do and what else should I do? Naruto asked her. He was willing to get any advice from anyone, well, maybe except for Jiraiya. He was still pissed about him trying to make one of his smut books about him and Temari. Well, there are several things you can do for a woman. Ino started to get into lecture mode with Naruto. Don't forget to compliment a woman at times. Things like hair, looks are important. If she got a new dress, then comment on it because it's nice to know if a guy notices these things. Plus, if she needs help, you should help her before she has to ask. That shows that you really do care. Naruto nodded his head as he tried to remember all of this. Another thing is how you look. Ino told him. Naruto frowned as she looked at him. What's that supposed to mean? Well, for one, you need to get rid of that hideous jumpsuit. Ino pointed at his beloved suit. I mean all that bright orange. I'm amazed you haven't gotten it. Just screams out, here I am, come and me, to the enemy. But I like orange. Naruto whined. Ino sighed. Well, how about getting something with a little less? I mean, it's not exactly the kind of thing a ninja should wear. Naruto would have to think about it. He just loved orange, plus the jumpsuit was neat. It had a lot of pocket space and it was easy to repair and clean, not to mention it was cheap too. It was very comfortable as well, so he wore it all the time. But was it really that bad for a ninja? He thought about what others wore and not many wore bright colors all that much. In fact, even Sasuke had taken to wearing a new black outfit that he had to admit was better than the older one. Well, what would be better? Naruto asked, as he never did have any real fashion sense. Ino grinned. How much money you got on you? Naruto blinked a few times as he pulled out Gama-chan, his frog wallet. With the new pay he was getting, he had a bit more money these days. Plus there was that he had saved up over his life as well back at the home, but he kept that for emergencies or if he really needed it. Ino took a quick look and nodded. Okay, looks like you got enough for at least a couple of things. A couple of things? Ino suddenly pulled him on his arm. Yeah, come on, I'm taking you shopping and helping you to pick out some decent clothing. Before he could even stop her, she was dragging him through the streets of Konoha. Uzumaki home. Temari got back feeling tried and her feet worrying her. She placed her battle fan against the wall by the front door and kicked off her footwear. She noticed that Naruto's shoes were there as well and he must be home. She went straight the couch and fell onto it with a groan. After a bit she rolled onto her back and just felt like going into the onsen or at least in a hot bath, but she couldn't even move at this point. Hey Temari, that you? Called Naruto from another room. Her later entered and saw her sprawled onto the couch. Man, you look like you and Sakura-chan must have went all out. Thank. Temari said dryly. God, I feel tired and my feet areing me. Naruto thought back to some of the things Ino had talked about. Maybe I could help out. Temari looked at him for a moment. How? Well, I could. Naruto wasn't sure, the words just left his mouth without really thinking of what he could do. He had been hoping that she would know what he could do. He had to think of something and he tried to think of what he would want if his feet were hurting. I could give you a foot rub. Temari thought about it. She only got something like that from a spa, but it had been a very long time since she had gone to one of those. It would sound very nice at this moment as well. Alright, but don't try anything perverted. She warned him. I'm not Ero Senin, you know, Naruto said as he got to her feet. He wasn't sure what to do, so he started out gently with just rubbing them. Then he trailed his finger over her arch and she jumped with a yelp. Don't do that. Oh, why is that? Naruto asked her. Because it tickles, Temari said. Oh, it does it? Naruto grinned at her and Temari's eyes widened as she had seen that grin on his face during those pranks of theirs. Before she could pull her feet away, he grabbed one and started to tickle her sensitive areas of her feet. Temari tried to kick him, but she couldn't get a decent shot in with her one free leg, and then he suddenly managed to sit gently on her leg, pinning it. Now he could concentrate on tickling her foot and soon Temari couldn't fight back anymore. She was laughing so hard she could barely say a word out. Give up? Naruto asked as he paused. You little bastard, she said, which only got him to start again. Okay, I give. Naruto chuckled as he released her feet and got a kick to his arm for it. That wasn't funny. It was for me. He grinned at her. You should laugh more, you know. You got a nice laugh. Temari was silent. No one had ever said that about her. Then again, she hadn't really laughed before she had met Naruto. He made her smile even if it was just something stupid he was doing or from him actually trying to make her feel better. Naruto told her to put her feet back but only after she made him promise not to tickle her feet again. It took Naruto a bit to see what would work and what didn't as he listened to what Temari told her what was feeling nice or what hurt from too much pressure. After about a few minutes Naruto figured out how to give her a good foot rub. Okay, that feels so good now, Temari sighed as she smiled as he rubbed her feet. Too bad you can't get my shoulders too. Sure I can, he said as he suddenly made a clone and told him to take over her feet. Temari had forgotten about that, and although it was something no boy had done to her before, she wasn't sure if she was ready for him to be that close to her in this kind of situation. But she was starting to trust him and her feet were feeling much better. One of the drawbacks to using her battle fan was the strain it put on her neck and shoulders area. How come your skin is soft? Naruto asked, confused as he felt her skin on her neck. I mean, aren't you from a desert? Piece of advice if you want to be rice in Suna is that you invest in certain things. Water import is one, but another are skin care products, Temari explained to him. You think anyone likes to feel coarse skin all the time? You'd be amazed at how much of that stuff people buy, given how much damage heat and sand can do to your skin. Naruto hadn't thought about it. Then again, he had seen those large bottles of skin care products that she had in her room and in the main bathroom. Eventually she decided to give him a chance and moved down a bit to give him room. Naruto was a little nervous at this point. No girl had even let him do anything like this before. But he gently placed his hands on her shoulders and started to experiment with what felt good for her. After a little trial and error he eventually found what seemed to work. From Temari started to sigh at times. Temari was surprised with herself that she let him do this, but at the moment it felt too damn good to care. Damn, always with the surprises, Temari thought, feeling much more relaxed now with one Naruto on her feet and the other by her shoulders and neck. It felt very good. Okay, maybe there will be something else to look forward to in this marriage. Temari felt her eyelids getting heavy and soon she rested against Naruto as he continued to work on her. After a while, Naruto noticed that she had fallen asleep and he looked at her. Her face was more peaceful like this. She sighed as she seemed to snuggle against him a little and Naruto blushed as she did. His clone was giving him a scowl like he wished he had been in his place but didn't say anything to wake her. Naruto looked down at her and he smiled. She really was pretty, especially when she relaxed her face like this. All the tension was gone and it was like he was seeing a part of her that she kept hidden from the world. He really shouldn't enjoy this but he couldn't help it, but eventually he figured he might as well put her in her room. He motioned for the clone to get closer and whispered something to him. He nodded and ran off quietly upstairs as Naruto gently moved Temari into his arms. She was a bit bigger but Naruto was stronger than he looked. Carrying her bridal style, he gently walked up the stairs. Her gentle breathing was against his neck and he had to admit it felt nice. He gulped as he felt himself getting all warm. Her door was open when he got there as the clone had made sure it was, and her bed covers were pulled back too. Naruto gently laid her in the bed and covered her up, and for a moment he stood there smiling at her. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't look away from her like this. On instinct he gently ran a hand over her cheek and she moaned something in her sleep as he quickly pulled back in case she woke up and asked what he was doing. He saw his clone there and jerked his head to the door. A couple of hours later Temari woke up feeling well rested. She wasn't sure why at first as she looked around. She was confused as to why she was in her bed. The last thing she remembered was getting a very good massage by Naruto. She blushed remembering that she had no idea the blonde was so good. Damn, get a hold of yourself, Temari thought as she got out of bed. Okay, so he's good with his hands, no need to get like that, even though it did feel really nice. She sighed to herself as she wondering how long she had been out and how she got into bed. Temari smelled something cooking and followed it to the kitchen. Hey, you're up. I wasn't sure if I should wake you or not. Naruto smiled at her as he noticed her walking in. It's alright, by the way, how did I get up to my room?